K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com. The leader in talk radio on the Internet, right here on K98talk.com.
Wondering why you're up early with us on a Sunday morning making a cocktail? News lately got you drinking? Hungover from the mainstream media by Sunday? We are, and we got you covered.
We sure do. We got your hangover cure for those weekly news blues. So sit back, top off your mimosa, and add some Baileys to that coffee.
Take a match to your copy of the New York Times. Light, funny, and oh yeah, news with booze.
And a lot of laughter.
Welcome to Bloody Marys and Broadsheets.
Good Sunday morning, everybody. Happy June 7th. This is Stacey, and today with me I have a substitute co-host, Mr. Rick Robinson, who also happens to be the station manager for the K98 platform. Welcome, Rick.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. How are you? And let's just call it like it is. I'm not substituting. I'm slubstituting.
Slubstituting, right. So, we don't have all of our maybe usual sound effects today. We've got a little bit of fun going on. We're going to be talking here in just a few minutes to Stephani Scruggs, who is an activist with the Coalition for a Strong America, working on TPA down in D.C. We'll bring her on in just a few. And then a little bit later in the show, we're going to talk Rubio traffic tickets, Hillary now not being maybe quite so inevitable, and some more delusional stuff from Mr. Obama. So, he had quite a delusional week when we get right down to it. So it should be a lot of fun. Anyway, great weekend so far. You can tell it's summer, Rick. I am going like pretty much 24 hours a day from Friday through Sunday. So it's going to be a busy, busy summer. How about you?
About the same. But pretty much I go 24/7, so it's not really anything too different. It's just now there's even more to cram in on the weekends. Yay!
Exactly. And speaking of weekends, do you know what it's time for?
Yes, ma'am, I do. Here we go.
And it's time for the weekend update, brought to us from our good friend, Eric Williams, over at barbedwiresatire.com. So the news this week. President Obama said at a town hall meeting last week that his administration had restored the United States as the most respected country on earth. This weekend, Mr. Obama will be taking his stand-up routine to the Laugh Barn in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and the cover is $10.
President Obama suffered defeat in the courts this week when a 3-judge panel ruled that his executive amnesty overreach could not move forward. While legal battles remain, Mr. Obama said he will not appeal to the Supreme Court for a stay in the decision, but will work instead on other ways to implement his illegal Democratic voter registration drive.
And military commanders are saying that President Obama is ignoring their advice in targeting ISIS, opting instead to stay with his faltering strategy of letting the terror group run wild in the Middle East. Raping and beheadings are one thing, but wait until those evil bastards start denying climate change. That'll be the day that bombs start falling.
President Obama is urging Congress to extend parts of the Patriot Act that are set to expire. The president is fighting to keep the lone wolf provision, even though it's never been used to successfully stop a terror attack. Hey, Mr. Obama, if you want to locate all the lone wolves out there, just hold Muhammad drawing contests everywhere.
There you go. They come out of the woodwork. Now that the Run, Warren, Run movement has stopped running, some New Yorkers who are worried about Clinton scandals are urging former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg to get in the presidential race as a challenger to Hillary. Supposedly, Michael can't stand Hillary, to which we say, go to the end of the line.
Negotiations surrounding Obama trade legislation continue to be clouded in secrecy and creating strange bedfellows. Speaker of the House John Pelosi is pushing the bill, even though he hasn't read it, and we have to pass it to find out what's in it. Weekend Update will say it again. Anytime the words fast track and Obama appear in the same sentence, it's best to run the other way.
And that is your Weekend Update for June 7th, 2015. And as promised, we have Stephani Scruggs on the line. Stephani is the co-chair of the Congressional Education Committee for Coalition for a Strong America. If you want to check out Stephani and a whole host of great conservative voices and ideas and information, you can go to coalitionforastrongamerica.com. Prior to working for this organization, Stephani was the national co-chair for Glenn Beck's 912 Project. And please welcome her to the show to talk to us about what's actually going on up in Capitol Hill with this whole TPA thing, Steph. We actually reviewed your primer and some other press on it on our show on Thursday. And one of the most interesting things to me is when I'm reading what the TPA actually entails, I can't find a conservative case for it anywhere. So if you espouse conservative principles, how could you support the complete abdication of constitutional responsibilities by Congress?
You really can't. And thanks for having me on. Happy Sunday, everybody. But you're right, you really can't. Unfortunately, there's like this knee-jerk reaction where, when some Republicans hear free trade, they're like, oh, I'm all for free trade. I got to do this. The problem is they're forgetting that they're letting Barack Obama tell us this is free trade. And I don't trust his definition of whether the sky's blue or not, let alone what free trade might be. And so it's a knee-jerk reaction by Congress, and we're doing our best to educate them as to what's wrong with this whole little plan of giving Congress's power, not only to the president, but ultimately over to international tribunals and world courts.
Can you explain that concept just a little bit more in terms of how that works within the TPA or within the total context of the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership? Because I'm not sure people really understand how much American sovereignty could potentially go away if this legislation passes.
Oh, it's stunning. So first of all, what you need to know is that Fast Track TPA is this bill before Congress where Congress gives their power to negotiate international trade agreements and treaties to the president. Now, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the United States Constitution says that Congress has that power to conduct international trade negotiations. Paul Ryan apparently didn't read that part because he's busy running around trying to convince everyone that the only way Congress can have power is by giving away their power to the president. So that's, Paul's a little lost. So that's what Fast Track does. And what Fast Track is meant to do is it's meant to slam dunk the passage of a massive trade agreement known as the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement that covers the eastern side of the world, and the Transatlantic Trade Agreement, which covers the western side of the world. So for all intents and purposes, these are blanket agreements that cover each half of the world. And realistically, because they're docking agreements, any country can join on to them at a later time. They're really the last two trade agreements of all time. And we're letting Barack Obama negotiate them all by his wee lonesome if Paul Ryan gets his way. That should terrify everyone, okay? So what happens in these, though, what's really detrimental in these bills is not only is Congress giving away their power to the president, they are also giving away their power to object to any of the rules and regulations that the president imposes after the trade agreement has been signed, right? So when you sign a trade agreement, there's all this implementing legislation and regulations that come with it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if they pass Fast Track, they don't get to object to that implementing regulations whatsoever. They don't get to amend any of the legislation. They just have to do it. And if they do not approve all of the laws that Barack Obama lays down, then it's not Barack Obama enforcing them. It becomes world court tribunals enforcing them instead, because we signed a treaty in advance saying we'd change all these things. So what happens is you get WTO tribunals, big world courts, telling the United States, yeah, you got to change your laws. And we just recently saw this happening with a cool ruling, country of origin ruling. The World Court just, I guess it's been 3 weeks ago now, came down and told the United States, hey, guess what? You can't do country of origin labeling anymore to any of the NAFTA partners, Canada, Mexico, whatever. This is why you see commercials from like Sonic, for instance, now don't say 100% American beef or our beef is raised in Wyoming. No, those commercials now have to say 100% North American beef because the WTO ordered us to change our laws and our advertising accordingly.
So, and I know, and that's disturbing for me personally because I actually, especially with food products, shop country of origin for any number of reasons. The agricultural practices in Mexico are not that wonderful. And some of what they do to their produce and other things like rinsing grapes in bleach and such. So, I mean, I don't buy grapes from Mexico and I don't buy certain things out of season in the US or Canada because of those things, and we won't know anymore.
And the really devastating thing is, as bad as Mexico is, these countries that are covered by the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement are all third world countries. It'd be polite to call them emerging economies. Many of them are just pre-emerging economies. And they have almost zero food safety standards. Yet, what the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement does is it says as long as another country has a written set of food rules that's good enough for their own citizens, we have to accept them here if we sign this trade agreement, right? So in the case of Vietnamese catfish, when inspected, it has been found that 80 to 90% of it is contaminated with worms, rodent feces, hair, DDT, and mercury, and then they dump antibiotics over it to keep it alive long enough to ship it to the United States. And the antibiotic levels are far above what we would have, right? Here's what's really terrifying and why it's good to read food labels now. The USDA and the FDA only hands-on inspects 3% of the food imports that come into this country. So just because you're seeing a catfish from Vietnam, also known as swai, by the way, on your food shelves doesn't mean it's been inspected. And we already know from past inspection failures, 80 to 90% of it is bad, right? So, but if we move forward with TPP, not only will the USDA and the FDA not be allowed to reject this contaminated food, it also won't have any country of origin labeling on it. So now not only can the feds not protect me from poisoned meat, I can't protect myself by choosing American-grown catfish instead of poisoned Vietnamese catfish.
Ugh. And that's just one example of things that would impact us as citizens of the United States with a certain set of standards in terms of this very global trade agreement. Now, I did read an open letter from Senator Sessions to Barack Obama.
Senator Sessions has to be my favorite senator on the Hill right now.
Very, very critical of the secrecy with which this whole process is going down. I mean, I thought it was a joke when they said they were keeping this thing in a locked basement room. It's not.
Nope. It's not.
They're
it's
actually
terrifying.
being escorted down to read it.
Not just escorted, they're searched before entering the room. No kidding. They cannot bring in their phones. They cannot bring in any cameras, anything but which could be used to make a copy of the document. No recording devices, so they couldn't even take a voice recording of it. If they bring staff, their staff has to have high-level classified security clearances, and the same applies to them. They can take notes while they're in the room. However, they have to leave those notes there, and they're searched upon exiting as well. No kidding. These are our congressmen and senators. And as Mr. Sessions has been threatened with, if they talk to anybody, the press, even their own staffers, if they talk to their own staffers who do not have classified clearance, they can be facing 5 years in prison. In fact, that threat has been leveled against Pete Sessions for the amount of talking he's been doing about what's in the TPP. And God bless him, his attitude is kind of like, bring it. I'm a U.S. Senator. I've got a job to do to serve the people. You go ahead and prosecute me. I'm going to keep telling the people what kind of hijinks you're trying to pull here.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, the most transparent administration in history, right? I mean, on what planet is it okay for our senators and representatives not to be able to understand what the feelings of their constituents are about this? And how are we supposed to have feelings about it if we don't know what it is?
Exactly. You know, we met with another congressman, and this was equally stunning. This congressman had taken a junket to Japan and happened to mention to one of the Japanese diplomats, hey, how do you think the TPP negotiations are going? The diplomat told that congressman, I'm sorry, your president's USTR, your president's trade representatives have told me I am not allowed to discuss this with you or I'll be kicked out of the negotiations. Needless to say, the congressman's head about exploded. Again, I'm a U.S. congressman. And they've just been ordered not to talk to him about it. It's stunning. Now, keep in mind, because it gets hard to go back and forth between fast-track TPA and what's in the TPP. Fast-track TPA is meant to ensure that the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement gets slam dunk passed, both in the Senate and the House. And that's how these things are related. Well, wait a minute. How can you decide whether to give something an easy pass if you don't know what's going to be in that something? And that's exactly what John Boehner and Paul Ryan and Barack Obama are asking Congress to do right now. Let's just give the authority to go ahead and pass this thing. We know you haven't read it. You don't really need to know what's in it. Just look the other way, pass fast track so we can pass Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement, this giant secret agreement. It's insane.
Well, and with that, there's, rumblings. If you take a look at what is purported or assumed, maybe is the right word, because there is so much secrecy about it. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, the actual agreement on trade, is a lot less about trade than it is about regulations around things like labor, wages, climate change, a whole host of items that are key to the Obama and progressive agenda.
You're absolutely right. The Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement is 29 chapters long. Only 4 of those chapters actually deal with trade issues. The other 25 chapters are all domestic policy changing, that's U.S. law and regulation changing policies. It's a regulatory agreement. It's not a free trade agreement. I'm all for free trade. This isn't free trade. It's a giant set of regulations to be imposed on us by the World Trade Organization and international bodies.
Well, and when you look at the unleashing of executive agencies under the Obama administration to begin with, again, just to go back to what you said about TPA itself, that would mean regulations put out by the executive branch that fall under the executive agencies, Congress would have no right to object to. They couldn't say, no, we're not going to do that. So you have the EPA, who currently put out regulations governing puddles, seriously, and has done all kinds of other things, including taking money from people for suspected violations, never proving the violation. You're going to have agencies like the IRS who targeted conservative groups unabashedly. So these executive agencies who've already proved they will act in a partisan way and will punish those who dissent are going to be given even more power to write regulation aligned with this.
You're absolutely right. And Congress, because it's already signed off on the trade agreement, no future Congress will have the power to change those regulations or laws that were changed as part of the implementing legislation and implementing regulations that come down from the president after it's signed.
I mean, Rick, what questions do you have for Stephani?
Actually, I've kind of just been enthralled listening to you two. I'm just being honest. I've tried to keep up with this, and I thought I was doing a pretty good job. But there are things in here that I had no idea were going on, like the whole congressmen being escorted to a locked room in the basement to even go over it. And just, not much of a question, but more of an observation. I kind of get the impression this whole TPP thing is kind of a way to get us backdoored into this one world government that it seems like everybody seems like they're trying to push for, because we're basically abdicating all of our rights and responsibilities once this thing goes into effect, and it just seems crazy that anybody would want to do that. But that's just
You're
my
absolutely
thoughts.
Right. And I've been accused of being some kind of conspiracist, for proposing such a thing. But here's the reality. WikiLeaks has actually leaked 3 chapters of the TPP. I never thought I'd be happy that Julian Assange lives in the world, but I am, because I've actually read more of the TPP than most of Congress. And one thing you find in here, and then also in the non-classified summaries that the United States Trade Representative Office has posted, you keep seeing this one word all through the document, which is the word harmonize. We are going to harmonize U.S. practices to match international practices. We seek to harmonize U.S. law to match international law. What that means, harmonize, is such a pretty word. We think of happy people singing. What harmonize actually means in this context is that the U.S. will be changing laws and regulations to match what an international body says is appropriate. This absolutely ducks our Constitution, and it throws any chance at sovereignty we ever had of retaining right out the window. It's gone if we sign these types of trade agreements.
Well, Stephanie, it's just about time for us to go into a quick break. Would you be willing to hang out for just a few more questions?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you. And we will be right back.
Turn up the sound and rip off the knobs. You're listening to K98Talk.com, the leader in Internet radio.
Are you conservative in a world of liberal?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're not alone. Hey, I'm Daniel Stafford, host of the Stafford Voice, and I'd like to invite you to tune in each Monday, 10 p.m. Eastern, where I'll break down the events of the week, and together we'll learn about how they affect you. So, sit back and get ready for the good, the bad, and the ugly of talk radio right here on K98 Talk.
Our military service members volunteer to protect us in the most dangerous places around the world. They step up. And when they are severely ill or injured, returning to their families is only the beginning of their long road home. Beyond all the hospitals and doctors and surgeries they need just to survive, they also deserve whatever they need to truly live. All the in-home care and day-to-day help they need to live independently, on their own terms. Wounded Warrior Project long-term support programs were established to provide these brave men and women whatever they need to continue their fight for independence, at no cost, for life. So many of them need us, and it's time for a grateful nation to step up. Find out how you can do your part at findwwp.org.
And welcome back to Bloody Marys and Broadsheets, your easy Sunday morning. This is Stacey, and with me today is Rick Robinson, station manager for K98, and we're just going to finish up our discussion here with Stephanie Scruggs from Coalition for Free America. Strong America. God, Strong America. Let me fix that. Coalition
You need another Bloody Mary.
StrongAmerica.com. Please go to her website. That would be the correct one. Anyway, during the break, Stephanie, we were talking about one element of the Trans-Pacific Partnership that is even more disturbing given kind of what's going on in the courts now, and that's immigration.
That's right. So the interesting thing about this, Chairman Paul Ryan, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, along with Senator Ted Cruz, released an op-ed about a month ago, trying basically to undo any of the progress that we've done in reaching Republicans on this. And one of the things that Paul Ryan says and Ted Cruz say in this document is that there's no way that the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement can change our immigration laws, right? And but here's the thing. They're playing with words here. TPP does lead to backdoor amnesty, and here's how. what it does is, while it doesn't necessarily right now change our immigration laws, it forces us to open our doors to hundreds of thousands, and actually when you add up the numbers, it's actually millions, of, quote, guest worker visas, right, which is foreigners who come here to take jobs, right? And this is mandated. Once we sign this, it'll be mandated by the WTO. Now, here's what we found, and here's how we know these people will stay. Under the South Korean trade agreement, 400,000, quote, guest worker visas were issued. 80% of those guest workers stayed past their visa and are now illegal aliens stuck here in the country, okay? So what happens is South Korea, and this is just in the last few years, so South Korea is also a member of the TPP. There are 10 other countries besides. When we take those numbers and multiply them out just by the 11 nations and go with the lowest possible number, we're looking at approximately 4 million guest worker visas being issued, so 4 million foreigners coming to America. And if 80% of those stay just like they did in South Korea, because, hey, who wants to go back to a third world country when you can stay here in good old America, we can expect approximately 3.2 to 3.6 million of those guest workers overstaying their visas and becoming illegal aliens. 3.6 million new illegal aliens coming to stay here in this country and reap the benefits of our tax system. In other words, take our tax money to subsidize their lifestyle. This creates a situation where there are so many more illegals in the country, and it helps push the entire amnesty meme. Well, we've got to do something for these people. Oh, and by the way, should they have children here, then their children are actually naturally born citizens, aren't they? They're automatically granted citizenship. So again, leading to the backdoor amnesty charge. Well, we've got to do something with these people. We got to have a heart. We can't send them back to that horrible third world country. We need to let them stay right here. And then we need to give them rights and driver's license and voting
Obamacare
records
and food stamps. And I'm sorry.
Don't forget the phone. They have to have the phone. Don't forget the phone.
And the phone. Yeah, no. Actually, one of the other guests we've had on, Michael Loftus, who does the Flipside Comedy Show, does a great piece on immigration that if it weren't so sad, it would be absolutely hysterical. But I mean, you have to laugh because of the way he phrases it. But when you look at the incentives for people to come here, they're nearly ridiculous. So I actually have no problems with open immigration if you fix entitlements first. But we're not going to do that in the current environment at all.
No. And there's a national security element here as well, because the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement is a docking agreement, which means that any country can dock onto it in the future without the United States approval. All it takes is 2/3 of the other trading partners to agree to let somebody in, right? So already the Sultanate of Brunei, which is a country that is officially ruled by Sharia law, is one of the trading partners. Now, what happens after we sign this agreement and 2/3 of our trading partners decide Iran should be a trading partner? We not only won't be able to say no, we won't be able to get out of this agreement. And oh, by the way, we'd have to issue those guest worker visas to the Iranian people that the government of Iran wants to send here to America. That sounds like a brilliant idea. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, brilliant. But I mean, it's not just that. It completely strips the United Nations and the United States of America the ability in such cases where we see gross human rights violations and other things to impose economic sanctions from a diplomacy standpoint.
You're absolutely right. And all Iran or Cuba, for that matter, would have to do to get around those sanctions is to apply to be a partner in one of these agreements and get the other 2/3 of countries to agree with them. China will be on the list. We all know that. It's not China containment by any stretch of the imagination. This administration, various members of it have invited China to join, and China has said they may have. But you bring up human rights, too. 8 of the 11 trading partners are on the State Department's bad guy list of human rights abuses. We saw last summer the Thai shrimp boats that were manned almost entirely by slave labor. A number of these countries are known perpetrators of the sex slave. It is not uncommon for 8 and 10-year-old little girls to be kidnapped from their homes in Singapore and sold to whorehouses and brothels. Are these the people we want to reward with our money and with our buying power? This is the largest consumer market in the entire world, right here in America. So if we're actually going to do good in the world, we ought to use that as our ultimate trading card to say, you want into our markets, you want to sell here and reap the benefits of having your products sold on Walmart shelves, then you need to come up to par. You need to raise up your food safety standards so that you're not poisoning our people. You need to raise up your toy standards, hello Chinese, so you're not putting lead paint on our kids' toys. And oh yeah, you need to quit selling little girls to whorehouses. Just an idea.
Just a small idea, and maybe in some other parts of the world you need to stop jailing journalists and beheading people who don't have the same religion as you, you know.
Just to backtrack for a second, if I might, she brought up an interesting point about the China containment, because Grouchy recently at the Southern Republican Leadership Conference actually had a chance to interview Ambassador John Bolton, and he mentioned that the TPP actually was started under the Bush administration. It was intended for that purpose. It was supposed to be able to bring the rest of the world to the level of China as far as their trade agreements and everything else. But this goes back to something that I've said I don't know how many times. Just because you're okay with the side that you support having this type of power, what's going to happen when it's the other side's turn? And we're kind of seeing a glaring, blatant example of that now. So it's crazy.
Well, you're absolutely right, but there's a little more to that, you know. So one thing that China did is just this last October, China formed the AIIB Bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Their initial deposits, their starting deposit from China was $1 trillion. That is more than double the other three world banks combined. That's the IMF, the World Bank, and the Asian Development Bank. So China has more than double what they have combined, right? Meanwhile, China has been getting all these different countries to sign up. They have 56 countries signed on now, which includes all but one of the TPP participating nations and almost all of our European allies, right? So there's this old saying that I've always found to be true, which is he who holds the money makes the rules, right? Just like in the Bible it says the borrower is slave to the lender. It's true. So China's got $1 trillion and 56 partners now. They're going to write the rules on this. This is not containment. We're looking at a little tiny, in comparison's sake, trade agreement with 11 partners who, by the way, are already partnered with China under the AIIB Bank, and we think this is going to control them? Furthermore, this administration, Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State said it, John Kerry as Secretary of State said it, and Barack Obama just a few nights ago said it. China has repeatedly been invited to join TPP, and just a few nights ago, China indicated they probably will. So tell me again, Paul Ryan and everybody else who's pushing this meme, how is TPP China containment? That horse done left the barn already when they founded the AIIB. They've got all the money, they've got all the trading partners, and we're not even putting things into TPP that would amount to containment. One of the biggest problems we have with China is currency manipulation. Currency manipulation from Asian countries, including China. And what that is, by the way, under IMF rules, currency manipulation is when a country goes into a foreign currency exchange and intervenes in it to make their dollar or yen or whatever seem smaller and make their goods cheaper. It's done as a predatory trade practice. And China's the worst at it, and eight of the TPP partners are also on the top 10 list of bad guys. Their combined efforts in conducting what amounts to a currency war against the United States has cost our GDP, according to the Peterson Institute, it has cost our GDP $800 million and 8 million jobs, right? So when we're looking at TPP, one smart thing they could have done if they really wanted to make this China containment was to put clauses in there to say that if you manipulate currency by conducting currency wars in foreign exchange markets, you will be punished, and here are the sanctions put against you. However, the administration has repeatedly insisted over and over again that they will not put that into the TPP, no matter what Congress insists. Congress has tried to make sure this is in there. They won't do it, right? Well, if you're not going to address currency manipulation, which is the number one trade issue in the world right now, we can't reasonably call TPP free trade. So again, why are we doing TPP? If we know that they're not going to fix trade problems, if we know that the vast bulk of this has nothing to do with trade, why are we doing this? It is to impose international regulations on the United States and lock us into a lifetime-long treaty, a forever, never-ending treaty that we can't get out of, that harmonizes us to world standards, removes our sovereignty, kills our Constitution, and puts us under the control of world courts.
You know, this show is called Bloody Marys and Broadsheets, and we joke a lot about topping off our beverage, but after this conversation, I'm really tempted to actually do it.
What do you mean after this conversation? I started drinking about halfway through because otherwise I'm just going to start crying.
Well, my liquor's not in arm's reach and I can't get off the phone. So, you know, I'm sitting here going this, you know, and I guess my biggest thing, I kind of opened with it, is I find no conservative case for TPA regardless of who is in office. I wouldn't have cared if it was George Bush. I would not have cared. I don't care if it's Barack Obama. Point is, the executive, given our separation of powers, should never have this kind of power. Ever.
No, I'm likely to agree with you. Here's what, if the Founding Fathers actually knew what they were doing when they set up Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, giving Congress this power.
Hang on a second. Did you hear that loud explosion? That was a liberal's head somewhere that was listening to the show.
So the reason the Founding Fathers gave this power to Congress is two reasons. Number one, they foresaw a time where there might be an ideologue in the White House that really didn't give a damn what everybody else thought, right? Oh, gee,
Ta-da!
We have that now. But the
Ta-da!
other reason, too, is the Founding Fathers recognized that Congress would be largely populated by men and women who had real-world business experience and not only knew how certain trade policies would affect their own backyard, but how they would affect business in general. And you need those kind of experiences moving forward in any kind of business negotiation, particularly in international negotiation. The reason Japan keeps kicking our butts in these negotiations is because Japan's negotiators are not bureaucrats like ours. They are instead the vice presidents of Nippon Denso and Mitsubishi, guys who make billion-dollar deals every single day for a living. What do we have? We have Barack Obama and Michael Froman, two ideologues who've never seen a boardroom table in their entire life, but they're going to define free trade for us. And so far, it seems they've gotten it pretty doggone wrong.
Maybe we should send Carly Fiorina.
Absolutely. I want Carly Fiorina, Donald Trump, and Mark Cuban at the next round of negotiations with the Japanese and the TPP partners.
There you go. Well, Stephanie, I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. Talk to the folks about what they can do to help you in your cause and also where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. Please go to coalitionforastrongamerica.com. We have a ton of information on Fast Track up there. We do actually do other issues as well, but the vote is happening likely this Thursday. And so we need you to go there, get educated, but also, and more importantly, call your congressman. Tell them to vote no. So you can do that by dialing 202-224-3121. Give the operator your zip code. They'll connect you to your congressman. If you get an answering machine, leave a message. That's okay, because they still count those. Otherwise, you can go to house.gov, and in the upper right-hand corner, there's a enter your zip code, find your representative. You can send an email or leave a voicemail message or speak to a human being if you're lucky that way too. But it is imperative that you please call your representatives this week. Call them as much as you can, as often as you can. Tell your friends to call them. That's what it's going to take to stop this. Stop Fast Track. That's all you need to tell them. Don't vote for it. Stop Fast Track. Thank you guys so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it, and thank you, listeners.
Stephanie, before you go anywhere, I have a quick question. Do any of the organizations that you're involved in have any type of audio spots promoting how folks can fight this, or how they can contact folks, or anything like that? Because if you do, or even if you don't, we can actually probably work on getting something put together, and I would donate the airtime to run it here on pretty much every show we have. So.
Oh my gosh, that would be fabulous. We don't have anything like that. You know, Michael Bowen, the other national co-chair, and I, we do this largely out of our own pockets. And so, yeah, that would be fantastic. You can also check us out on Facebook at Coalition for a Strong America on Facebook. And on Twitter, we're strong_America and the number 1. And you can follow us there as well.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to take a moment just to say, for JD specifically, who I know was looking forward to being here and unfortunately fell ill, it's been my pleasure being in on the interview. I know I didn't contribute too much, but that's because you guys were rocking it and I didn't want to mess anything up.
Well, and Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we'll get you the information about how you and Michael might be able to record a repeating ad for at least this week.
That would be fantastic. Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right. Best of luck this week, Steph.
Thanks.
Bye. Wow.
I
had done some reading, and I certainly, if you haven't read Senator Sessions' open letter, it is in it was posted in full on Breitbart. I strongly suggest you go read it. I mean, here is a senator who is standing up and saying, really, come get me. I'm going to keep talking about it because the American people deserve to know what's going on. And they have actually threatened him with legal action. I think Senator Sessions and folks like Stephanie and Mike with the Coalition for a Strong America really need our support. They're really on the front lines battling to maintain our sovereignty.
Yeah, you know, and because we have a wide variety of hosts, everybody's kind of been touching on CPP a little bit here and there, so I've done some research into it, but I had no idea how extensive it was, and the fact that it's basically another version of Obamacare, but it's even worse because now you have to go down, probably 30, 40 flights of stairs, go into some secret dark room somewhere. Every time you go into the room, you have to sign away the rights to your firstborn child. I mean, come on.
It's crazy. I mean, this is how the administration is treating our elected representatives. Never mind, they don't want us to know anything that's going on, okay? But they don't really want our elected representatives to know either. And I didn't realize some of these documents had been posted on WikiLeaks, so that is like the first place I'm going when we're off the radio.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta go see them myself.
I will be doing that myself. But yeah, you know, it's interesting because you remember at the beginning of his term, he actually made it to where nobody played Hail to the Chief when he was going into and out of a room. I'm wondering if at some point he's going to replace it with the Imperial March.
We actually play that for Hillary. And speaking of Hillary... Oh, God. And maybe we shouldn't. You know...
That's all right. I've already been drinking. We're good.
Some interesting press on her this morning. Seriously. One of our favorite New York Times folks, and to me, this is amazing that this is showing up in the Times, actually put out an opinion called Hillary the Tormentor. And it says that the headline says, I'm with Hillary, but with H and ARY is crossed out, and it says I'm ill. It really goes whole hog into this feeling among the Democrats where they're furious with her, but they're almost determined to support her. Because A, she's a woman, and B, they're worried about the Supreme Court. So, I mean, it almost seems like logic be damned, don't evaluate a candidate based on their pros and cons, almost like we have to do this. But at the same time, these scandals and their just absolute inability to stay away from icky stuff is really making people on the left very, very tired.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about it for a second. I mean, and I've said this on several different shows, but I'm just going to throw this out now. This is my primary reason, other than everything else that everybody thinks about, is the reason why I don't think Hillary's a good idea. Bill Clinton, alone with heads of states' wives. Because, you know, when she's negotiating and out of the country, he'll probably go with her. Normally what happens is the wives of heads of state go into one room and the heads of state do all the work in the other. Do you really want Bill Clinton alone with the wives of heads of state? Is this a good plan?
I don't know. I'm thinking he probably will participate very little in her administration should she be elected.
Well, he's going to have to. I mean, look at how, and pardon my language, but look at how pissed off she got when there was somebody, when she was Secretary of State, who asked her what her husband thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that didn't go over well. Lead balloon.
Right. You know, it was actually another opinion piece came out this morning by Dana Milbank, and it's called Clinton the Inauthentic. And it goes back to what JD and I were discussing on Thursday, which you weren't, you may have been listening to, where the left, like the entire Democratic Party has been dragged left, largely due to the run, Warren, run, and Hillary kind of having to defend to that. There's actually a fair amount of press and opinion pieces out there now saying Hillary can't really authentically address those progressive ideas after what's come out regarding the Clinton Foundation. I mean, almost any scandal you want to put up, including the FIFA one recently, okay, World Soccer, you can tie back to the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, I mean, they're just not good people. Can we just be honest? They're not good people.
You know, they're terrible, terrible people. And you need to remind your friends over and over and over again. And JD's not there, so I'll say it. The piano leg thief cannot be in the White House. Not going to happen. So we've got to do a great job with our primary and get our people out and really, really at the polls. But, you know, to try to sway people to vote for Hillary, the New York Times did something this week that was absolutely ridiculous. Did you see it?
Actually, I did get a chance to kind of look it over. So, yes, I have seen it, technically.
Okay, you have seen it.
Yes.
Well, they decided to do a full-page expo on Mark Rubio's traffic tickets. So this is largely the paper that hawks itself as all the news that's fit to print does a full article on Mark Rubio's traffic tickets. But Mark Rubio's traffic tickets were not enough because his traffic tickets, he'd had 4 since 1997. Okay?
So they went after the wife.
So they went after the wife, who apparently has a little bit of a lead foot. And then had the gall to fight the tickets in court. So what I loved most about this story, Rick, if you're familiar at all with the Free Beacon, okay? The Free Beacon went out and looked at who had accessed Mark Rubio's traffic information in Florida. It was not the New York Times. It was a progressive activist organization and opposition research center called American Bridge. So American Bridge basically, best we can tell, handed this information over to the New York Times. And the New York Times printed it.
Marched and printed it up, you know, because that's what good little liberals do.
I mean, it was, and then when Free Beacon asked them to comment, and this is why, if you guys don't follow Free Beacon and that is not on your list of places to go every morning, these guys are doing some great stuff. I believe it was Gabriel Mailer that unearthed the George Stephanopoulos donation to the Clinton Foundation. When he asked ABC for comment, ABC was so scared of the Free Beacon, they responded to someone else instead. They knew it was going to break, and rather than have it break in Free Beacon, they put spin on it through another news organization. So when Free Beacon started reporting on this, on the way that this went down with Marco Rubio, and inquired who gave you this information, they actually responded to Politico for a friendlier article. So put Free Beacon on your list, guys, because they're doing some good work.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to add them in, because I have to admit I hadn't heard of them before now. So
yeah, no, definitely some good work. And is it time to go to a quick break?
Yeah, we got to squeeze the last one in.
All right, perfect. Be back in just a few minutes.
You have found the best place on the internet by tuning into K98Talk.com, where it is our mission to broadcast the very best variety programming, giving you a balance of information from every angle and letting you decide. We are here to serve our listening audience with a proven track record. So stay with K98Talk.com and we will keep you informed.
Red Nation Rising brings you Town Hall Radio.
From a single tweet to 3 million a month, our community is a force to be reckoned with on social media.
So don't miss our show, Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern on K98 Talk.
Our chat room is our co-host, and you ask the question.
Join us and be heard.
So get ready to sound off on Red Nation Rising Radio. No one else is going to do it for you.
There's a wild, wild whisper blowing in the wind, calling out my name like a long lost friend.
The staff of K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network is proud to announce that our very own Rowdy Rick Robinson has been selected as one of the top conservative talk show hosts in the nation for his program America Off the Rail. Again, congratulations to Rowdy Rick Robinson for a job well done and another reason to stay connected to K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network.
And that break did feature the newest member of the K98 Talk family, Red Nation Rising. They are on Thursday nights at 8, right after Rick and right before JD and I with Game On. So their format is interesting. I would encourage you guys to tune in. They've got some great guests, and they actually take questions from the chat room. So different format, and last week it seemed to go really well. So we're glad to have them. Just going to close out here with a couple of Obama delusions. How's that, Rick?
Well, I mean, if his lips are moving, he's probably talking about a delusion. Just saying.
So earlier this week, he put out a video that said he was not a divisive president, that his goal was to bring people together. And my comment was, well, he's not divisive as long as you're not white Christian or conservative or, whatever. There's a whole list of things he would like to cut out of the American culture. But I actually watched that and laughed out loud. Shortly after that, he made a statement saying he was the most Jewish president to ever sit in the Oval Office.
Sorry, I can't help but laugh on that one because that's just... Are you kidding me? I mean...
no, he actually said that out loud.
I could almost understand. I could almost believe it if he said he was the most Palestinian president we'd ever had. Not the most Jewish.
He said he was the most Jewish president to have sat at the White House. And not only that, he spoke at a synagogue earlier this month and was actually lecturing the synagogue about Jewish values. It's almost as funny as when he got up and said ISIS is not really Islamic. So apparently he's like the arbiter of world religion at this point. That's really what it's coming down to. But and just to cap off the delusions of the week, Dan Pfeffer, who used to function as a top Obama aide and is now working as a commentator on CNN, put out what I think could possibly be the most ridiculous tweet ever last night. And what it said was, another accomplishment. Obama, first president to have a Triple Crown winner since Carter. So somehow Barack Obama made the Triple Crown possible at Belmont yesterday.
Well, of course he did. I mean, come on. The left has looked at him as the Messiah from day one. I mean, think of his first speech when he started talking about this is the day that the tide started to recede. I mean, come on. I mean, it's only delusional, Stacey, if it's not true. And as far as he's concerned, it's true. So, I mean, maybe we're the delusional ones. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah, but doesn't it really seriously sometimes start to feel that way, in all honesty? But I think it's almost time to call Lionel out the other room.
Yeah. Hey, Lionel.
Yeah.
Hey,
Lionel.
What's up? Get in here. Come on. Dude, slacking. Come on now. Let's go. Okay.
Be sure to tune in to Game On This Week and Bloody Marys and Broadsheets next Sunday. Game On This Week on Tuesday, we'll have Judith Miller, and we'll be talking to her about her book, The Story. And on Sunday, we bring you Mary Catherine Ham and Guy Benson and their new book. So, pretty big week.
All right. Well, it's been my pleasure sitting in for JD. Hopefully he's back next week, so this show isn't quite as terrible as it was today.
Stop!
Well, I mean, come on. No, it was fun. Just, you know me. Self-deprecation's my thing. It's how I roll.
Yeah, I know. And Stephani was an awesome guest. Be looking forward to having her back on any number of causes that she is crusading on the Hill. So thank you very much, Miss Scruggs.
Yep. If you're still listening, Stephani, you can reach out to me at rick@k98talk.org. We can figure out how to get promos put together. I do have a guy that can do them, so if you need help with that, we can make sure that happens too, because I can take some of the audio that we've done today and mix one together anyway. So,
right.
Anyway, that's going to do it for today, folks. I'll be back with you live tomorrow night at 6. Stacey will be back with you to Tuesday night at 10 Eastern. I think. No.
10 Eastern on Tuesday, 9 Eastern on Thursday. And again, on Tuesday, we will have Judith Miller, the New York Times author who's actually jailed for protecting a source. So, pretty interesting lady. She's like my new hero. You read her and she's better than, what were those movies with Angelina Jolie?
Laura
Croft.
Laura Croft, Tomb Raider.
She is the Laura Croft of journalism.
All right. Well, we'll be back with you tomorrow night, or I'll be back with you tomorrow night, and it's been my pleasure sitting in for JD today. Brother, if you're listening, I hope you feel better soon, because you left some pretty big shoes to fill. I'm just saying.
If it's Sunday, it's Bloody Marys and Broadsheets.
We're your cure from your weekly news hangover.
Thank you for taking it easy with us. You can find our show account on Twitter at JD and Stacey, or send us your interesting news story of the week to Game On War, that's WAAR, @gmail.com.
And you can find me on Twitter at Scott's Fire and on Facebook at Stacey Lennox.
And you can find me on the Twitters at GameOnJD